Okay, so let me just start off by highlighting pressSIGN. So I've got pressSIGN running as a client on the computer that you're looking at here. My server is actually behind this finger here. It's the, I go that way, it's the green screen. That's where I've got my pressSIGN server. So it can be sitting anywhere. So you can run the AutoMode from your pressSIGN client. So as we're now starting to record this, I'm going to repeat myself, which is always a good thing to do when you're kind of training anyway. But pressSIGN will take the measurement file from your automated spectrophotometer on your press, and it will drop the measurement file into a hot folder, and pressSIGN can be programmed to then monitor that particular hot folder. That hot folder is shown as the green folder on my demonstration screen here. pressSIGN then reads the data, and that from the file that's dropped into that hot folder, pressSIGN can generate a new job name, a job ID for the file. It will recognize the press from which the file has come. It will recognize the target standard that you are trying to print to, and it will recognize all colors within the job. So that means CMYK and spot colors. So this can be used for normal CMYK printing, multicolor printing, anything that pressSIGN can read. And so pressSIGN will then automatically create the job for you. So this is wonderful, because then it takes away all of that work that you're used to doing in having to set up a job and make sure you've got the colors allocated. All of that kind of thing is completely done within the job file. So it's kind of done before pressSIGN even gets it. It's done in the pre-press area as the job is set up for the press, rather than setting it all up in pressSIGN. So this means that we are able to simply add files into pressSIGN, and it will create the new job for you and show you all the data, and it goes into the database as you would expect for any normal press run. So I've got an input folder which is green on my screen, and I've got a done folder which is where I've programmed my pressSIGN to send the completed red file to. Okay, let me just show you very quickly the modes that you're interested in. So under the file menu, there's a start auto mode, and it's as simple as that. And pressSIGN will then, once you've opened up the client, it will go into this mode where it's monitoring the hot folder that you see. Behind it, however, there are some other settings that would need to be set up, and these are the AutoMode defaults and aliases. If I open up the default dialog box, we work basically on a template basis. So the templates are really there for filling in the blank areas of the file that comes to pressSIGN. Some presses provide more information than others. So if your press doesn't provide, let's say, target standard information, then we can use a template to automatically complete that data. So that's what that does. We've got other settings that relate to if there's a job on the press for 8 hours and we go beyond that 8 hours, as an example, then pressSIGN would automatically start a new job. So you can set those kind of time limits to whatever you like. We can say to automatically start in auto mode, we can say where the hot folder is, and this is the address of my hot folder. And we can tell pressSIGN to either delete, move the files, or just keep the files in the same folder. Okay, and I've got mine moving into this yellow folder, which is my done folder. And there's a variety of other settings that, that relate to how the auto mode can operate. We also have another setting which is called aliases, and the alias button is something that I know Sandy has been Sandy and I have been involved in, where it would look at your spot colors, for example, and if you call spot colors PMS, 1, 2, 3, then we will translate that to a color that pressSIGN understands in its own library. So it would convert it, for instance, to Pantone 1, 2, 3 instead. So there's a number of aliases that may or may not be required by the software in order for it to process those spot colors correctly. If there is a situation where there's a spot color name in the job that pressSIGN doesn't see in the library, then it will automatically create a new library for you and enter that spot color data into that folder. But we try not to do that because you can end up with multiple versions of the same, multiple reds that are actually all meant to be the same color red. So we try to avoid that situation where possible. So that's just one little proviso, but it is a housekeeping thing. Any questions so far? Can you all hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Oh, good. Great. Okay, so all I'm now going to do, we've got pressSIGN sitting there with no job. It says, look, job ID, no job at all. It's saying as if I should enter a job. So I'm going to click on the File button and click on Start Auto Mode. And a window comes up. Hopefully you can see this, and this is the auto mode window. I'll drop it kind of in that area. I can minimize it so it just drops to the bottom tray of the computer screen so you don't really see it, and it just runs. This is really a mode where pressSIGN just runs in the background, really taking advantage of its server functionality. But I can obviously also stop or quit it, or I can actually ask pressSIGN to show me the pressSIGN window in the background, because what you'll see is that this sits over the front of the pressSIGN screen at all times. So I'm just going to move it kind of slightly off to one side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some files. Let's just drop one in for the time being. So I'm going to drop, you can see that file there. I'm going to drop that into the folder. Just imagine your press scanner has scanned this color bar, and the resultant file from the scanner sends it into this folder. Now this folder, just for your information, is remote. So it's actually on a cloud server. So it takes a second or two even to go to the cloud and then come back again. But you see, I've kind of done nothing with this file, and it looks like not a brilliant file to have imported, but that's just the way it is. But the process, you can see, actually works. So it's actually set up the job name. It's told me which press that we're using. The target standard was set into it, and we would see the measured colors. Now the measured colors have not come out brilliantly on that particular one. So let me just try a different run. Here's a few. So I'm going to drop 5 new files in from a different press. So this can take files from multiple presses. So if I just drop these in instead, and they've gone up to the cloud, they've come back, and you see the 5 files now arriving one after the other in pressSIGN without me doing anything other than letting those files arrive in the hot folder. Okay, and below in the yellow folder, which is my hot folder done, those files have now been copied over into that folder so that we can archive them and keep them for safekeeping for later, and they can go anywhere, wherever you program those files to go. So again, in this situation, we have a job name, we have a press, and we've got a target standard that's been used by pressSIGN, and everything is there. The color bar, which is the full screen in version 9, and the summary is all there with the dot gain information, etc. Everything is recorded there. So really, in essence, that is the auto mode, and it's a wonderful feature because it takes away more or less all of the requirements for the press operator to do anything in pressSIGN. He can just make the scan, and that action of making the scan, so long as everything else is set up in line, they will arrive in the in your folder. Any questions at all?
I got a question. You scan your first job, you put it in the file, and then you went and you scanned the other ones. Was it all the same job, or will it record different job numbers over there on the very left-hand side?
So there were two different job numbers. So the first one I did ended up with its own job number taken from the file. I then went to another press and dragged 5 files in from another press on a completely different job number, and it processed those.
Okay, so I'm not seeing both jobs over there, just the last 5.
You never do. You own in pressSIGN's screen, you only ever see the latest opened file.
Okay, perfect.
So yeah, so you only ever see that. If I wanted to look at the previous job, I'd go to the open job window and look in my database and launch and load that data from there.
Okay,
Right.
yep, that sounds good. I just didn't want to have it where, I have a couple presses, and they'll toggle back and forth and scan. I just want to make sure that each one was going to record its own.
It does. It does. So what pressSIGN does is it looks at the job name within the file. So if another job came in with the job name of 119157, pressSIGN would tack that next reading onto the end of this job. Okay. If it had a job from the previous job, it would open up the previous job and add that to the end of the previous job's readings. That's all taken from the file, the job name within the file that comes into pressSIGN.
Okay, very good.
It's the most powerful feature I think that we have in pressSIGN. And of course, with everything, it takes a bit of setting up, and there will be small teething problems until you make sure that your files meet the requirements that pressSIGN has. But once you've got that, so long as everything else falls into place and the pre-press guys are naming things correctly and you're using the right spot colors, it will just run without issue. And that's kind of as simple as it is. Let me just show you one or two little other operational things. I don't know if you can see, but in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a hot folder pause button, and you might be able to make out that there's a running timer. It just proves that the hot folder is up and running and waiting for the next job. So I can now, let's say there was a delay on press, I can now get some more jobs to come in, so that all of a sudden the press operators have decided to measure some more files. I'll drop those straight into the hot folder. These are from the same job as we already have open. So they're now going up to my cloud, and watch, they're coming in one after the other. But the main thing is this window here that shows you the top numbers where it says 87% in this window shows the average score of all of the readings that you've got. And the bottom part shows the latest reading that's been added to that job, just for your information. And if I wanted to stop auto mode, I could literally just hit the stop button. Now, the interesting thing is that the way auto mode works is if I did hit the stop button, it actually logs me out as a user, and I have to then log back in. So this is a good point. Auto mode is always requires you to be running the pressSIGN Pro client.
Bill, quick question. Does pressSIGN know when make ready mode is over and production mode has begun?
Yes, there's a couple of ways it knows that. One is often the press operator can enter that data or that change in the press console, so that pressSIGN picks that information up from the actual file. So in auto mode, that's really what should happen. So make ready mode is a specific change made by the operator that is actually tagged in the file, and pressSIGN would then know that you've moved from make ready to production. In this mode, that's really the way it should work.
So that's great. And the average score will only take into account the production scores.
Yes, if you go for the production reporting, it will only take into account the production scores. The score that we see on the screen is always the score from the last reading.
This is Ed. I've got a question. You're in a situation where the press is a closed loop system, how does this work with that?
This is only working with that. So your closed loop system will be sending data. So what you do is you program your closed loop system to send that measurement file into what pressSIGN understands is its hot folder. We can program pressSIGN to see a hot folder anywhere on the network. So this is definitely hand in hand with a closed loop system. This is really what AutoMode is for.
Okay, because I've seen some files come out of a closed loop system that are just density readings versus spectral readings.
Bill, I think you might be talking about in line with the press, like a Qualitronic or...
If you have specific use cases, we'd have to make sure that pressSIGN can actually understand that file format. pressSIGN does allow you to enter just density information. I'd always like to see the file first. I mean, it's so easy to test. I would simply drop your sample file into that hot folder. And if pressSIGN reads it, then that's good. If it doesn't, then we can look at what data is required by pressSIGN. And for the areas, if it reads the file but doesn't give us all of the information, then this is where we can use pressSIGN's template functionality to fill in the blanks. So if the data doesn't contain a target standard, for instance, then we can put that in, but just give us the file and we can test it. And then we can tell you what you're missing and whether it will actually work or not.
The other reason I asked is in the setup, in the preferences for setting up your hot folder and everything, there's a closed loop part of it where you can actually generate a file for a press from it, down at the bottom.
That's kind of different.
Okay,
so
that's what I was
talking about a different productivity method within pressSIGN. That functionality that you're talking about there, Ed, where it says closed loop here, I hope you can all follow me on the screen. This functionality of pressSIGN is so that when we are being used with some closed loop systems, let's give you an example, like a digital information ink zone system, we can use pressSIGN to gather the color measurement data and produce its normal report. And from there, forward that data on into the closed loop system, which then adjusts your ink keys. So that functionality is a different one. We're there forwarding our color measurement data into these systems. So it's a different thing.
Okay, so it depends on the system that you're setting this up for, whether it needs that or not.
So the AutoMode never needs this closed loop functionality because it's a different thing.
Okay, so I'm just wondering about the press system, whether they need this kind of file coming back out to then reset ink keys and things like that.
In some circumstances, we can use AutoMode to take the data and produce all of this information and forward another closed loop compatible file out of pressSIGN to go to the console controls. That can be done, but this is not relevant specifically to our hot folder functionality, which has got a dividing line. I don't need to have any of this turned on for my AutoMode to be working. But you can use the additional functionality of pressSIGN to send a file into a closed loop system if you want to.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so just in the pressSIGN preferences, your hot folder area, so it's literally pressSIGN preferences, and we then create the hot folder on the network, the input folder, and you also specify whether you want to delete or move that measured file. Once pressSIGN's ingested it, you can say to pressSIGN where to move that file to.
Now you can mount that folder on your pressSIGN PC as a map drive. It'll just look inside there all the time. Right? And then you can, what we do is we move them to a job folder. So if we want to go back and analyze something or to see if anything's gone wrong, we've still got all that data to go back to, rather than just delete it. But yeah, it's real easy to set that up.
It's a little bit of networking setup, but the good thing is usually you set it up once and forget it. It's only if you ever have a network problem that you might then need to go and look at it. Yeah, so that mapping of a network, wherever that you've got those files going from your closed loop system, you may even have a situation where you've got a system where it copies your measurement file to somewhere else, and you can just let pressSIGN pick it up from a new folder. And if you've got a copied version of a measurement file, you can then get pressSIGN to simply delete the file once it's finished. But if you don't, then you can just move it to somewhere else, okay, to keep your copy. So either way, it all works. I think the other question that was coming up may be a bit difficult for me to show. AutoMode alias. Is it the aliases you wanted to see there?
Aliases and templates, actually.
Mm. The templates. Okay, right. Well, as I'm in the AutoMode aliases bit now, I'll show you that. So this is just, it's a bit of programming that you can do or we can do, but there's a default set already where pressSIGN would look at naming conventions. Basically, if a file comes in that's got a PMS number, if I say PMS 123, then it says, okay, I understand what PMS 123 might be or might mean in your file, and I'm going to recognize that as Pantone 123C. We can help you through any programming if you've got weird spot color names that pressSIGN doesn't understand. So that's part of your aliases. The template bit, there's a little tab here. Within the file, we can say to pressSIGN, right, if you see this entry in the file that comes from the closed loop system, then you are to use this specific template. And the template then would specify what color standard. So for instance, it could be an uncoated media standard. So if pressSIGN saw pressSIGN _5 S_UB in the file, it would then say, I'm using a particular template, and that template allows pressSIGN to then specify what target is being used, gray balance, the score, and which contains the scoring system and all of that kind of thing. And templates can be set up in the job settings area. Just as a one little thing, you might notice that this new job and open job and all of this section is grayed out. And that's because AutoMode is running on my computer. So I can't get to it because I've got AutoMode running. I'd have to quit AutoMode to then go and set up those particular templates, which I can show you if you want me to.
If we have a job that has specific customer spot colors, like a spot color library, say for Revlon, where we've got a Revlon red, a Revlon blue, this kind of stuff.
Yes.
If we use AutoMode, how does it pick those lab values up from the correct spot color library?
I'm now going to quit AutoMode because I have to show you. So, and you see the screen's gone now. So let me just relaunch pressSIGN. I think I've got it set so that if it crashes, inverted commas, it restarts. So cancel that, stop AutoMode. Now I can just log in. So that's another great fail-safe that if for some reason pressSIGN's running on your computer and for some reason it crashes, it will then restart itself. So me quitting, it's gone, well, you've quit and I don't want to quit. So I had to actually go in and physically stop the AutoMode working. Regarding Sandy's question of the target standards, if I go to the job settings now, and hopefully you can see this window, the libraries that we have are many. And if I had a color in any of the libraries that are within pressSIGN, pressSIGN will automatically look at every single library that you have. So if Revlon red appears, it will look and it will find that color and related to that color, preferably the spectral data, but at least the LAB values. So it automatically picks that up. This is why I was saying that ideally you'll have that specific target folder, that target color in an existing library, rather than having pressSIGN create an automatic library for you. So in my Walgreens brand versus colors, if I go red, maybe it's in, so we've got a Walgreens red and stuff like that. I thought I had it in this particular one.
Now,
But,
Phil, it does have to be exactly named the same, correct?
yeah, well, this is where, yes, the ideal thing is that your pre-press guys who set the jobs up before they get into the press system should be using exactly the right naming convention for your spot colors. However, if they don't, and if your closed loop system expects P123 instead of Pantone 123, that's where the aliases conversion comes in. But ideally it would be better if they exactly named the color, because that's the only way pressSIGN will see it.
I also noticed in there that there was a library called SVF. I think that's the library that it creates for like rogue colors that it doesn't know what to do with.
Yes. The name of that library, which is SVF here, that is correct for some systems. It could create another name.
Heidelberg, blah, 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 or something like that.
Well, Prinect image controllers I've highlighted there is an automated name. SVF for some systems is another automated name. So it depends on the system that those colors have actually come from.
Okay, and then it's just those are the ones that it couldn't find an alias for, and it couldn't find a match for, and it just throws it in there by default.
Yes.
With, you know, and tries to build it based on the file that's coming in.
It does. The file that comes into pressSIGN would have not only, it has the target data of the spot color as well as the measured data. So that enables pressSIGN to create that spot color and put it into that new library.
Okay, so having the target data set on the press correctly does make a difference when it comes to evaluating colors.
Your closed loop system is very likely to have, or quite possibly able to have, its own spot color library. However, pressSIGN has its separate spot color library, and the two target values may be different. And pressSIGN's, we would like to think, is the easiest to update and the easiest to make sure that it's modernized. Most closed loop systems are pretty stuck in their ways, and if you need to update a spot color or even add a new color to a library, they are notoriously difficult to do. So we would normally expect you to use the pressSIGN measurement and the pressSIGN report as the de facto on whether you are meeting the color requirement that's there. It's obviously nice to get your spot color exactly the same on the press system, but they are two separate systems.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And so what I was sort of getting at is, if a color is in the press system, but it's not in a library in pressSIGN, then it's going to use the target value in the press system. If it's in pressSIGN and it's an exact match, then it'll use the pressSIGN target value and score it that way.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
So let me clarify one thing, because you said about press system, this is there may be an even a third option that pressSIGN actually does. So you might have a spot color built into your press system, and let's say that the target number is 123, and that's built into your press system. But the file comes in and says that this color named X has a target value of 124. And pressSIGN has X as a target value of 125. So there'd be three different target values, one in your press system, one in the file, and one in pressSIGN. pressSIGN will refer to its target value irrelevant whatever is in the file, so long as the name of the spot color is a match.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep, I get exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. The target values within a spot color library in pressSIGN are those that are used so long as the name is a match. So as an example, Echo MPS, if I just pick one color out, this violet, and I go and look at the color values, the lab values that are here are the ones that pressSIGN would be measuring against. And it doesn't matter whether your lab values are different in your press system, and it doesn't matter whether your values are different in the file. So long as it sees that violet name, it will use those lab values to say you're close or you're not.
Nope, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. So your templates, just by the way, are only shown if I go to a new job. Essentially what happens is we set all of the settings like client name, potentially you could use color bar, but this is another great thing about AutoMode is your color bar is irrelevant. Actually, you can just have any because the color bar is built into the file that comes from the press. So you can have any color bar, but you'd have a press designation and the way that the press is set up. Target standard is built in. So once we've got all of these fields completed, you can then go to the template and create a new template for those settings that you have below. And then we use that template to say, right, if you see this number or this field in a file coming in, to use this, whichever of the templates that we decide that we want to use. So there's a lot of kind of referencing back, of course, for missing data. All good? Any questions?
So once you've got a template set up, you go to AutoMode default, right? And you choose the template there and set it up.
Correct. So I've got a template, WestRock MPS, and it actually tells me what settings are within that file.
Now, in AutoMode, you've got especially the same setup as in preferences, right? For the hot folder, right? So
Yeah.
you set up in AutoMode defaults.
Yeah.
Right. And you choose the template and everything else there as well, right?
Yeah. So this is your AutoMode defaults setting. But you can have more than one template. This is just the default template. So if pressSIGN sees a file entry that says, you know, it will have numbers and letters. If pressSIGN sees those numbers and letters, it will use a different template. If it doesn't see those, this is the default template it would use. So that's in the, it's hard to know, but it's in the aliases side. If I go to template, if we see this line in a file, then pressSIGN will go, right, I'm going to use a template that relates to this. If it sees that line in my system, it will use a different template. I can actually use multiple templates within pressSIGN. All we need to know is that the closed loop system writes this particular line in the file before pressSIGN gets it.
So how would we know what that line was? Would you have to do a test kind of thing and see what the text file looks like?
That's the best way to do it, is to actually take a text file from your closed loop system and read through the lines and see what specific thing may mean that you can use that for a fixed set of template options. But most of these things we've catered for within pressSIGN. So the use of aliases, we try to minimize as much as possible. Mm-hmm. So most of the time, these closed loop systems put enough information in for pressSIGN to know what is going on. Right. And in the situation where you've got a brand new closed loop, I don't know whether it's going to write new types of data into the file. We're always looking for you to send us sample files to make sure it's all working properly.
I can send you a sample file from H3, which is the image control next generation version 3. That's why I tested this one.
My testing system is very easy. I drop a file into the hot folder and watch what pressSIGN does with it, because it just deals with those very quickly and easily. If somebody has a problem with pressSIGN, I can say, send me the file, and I just drop it in a hot folder. I don't have to set up which spot colors were in the job, what the job name was, what the press was. I don't need any of that. I can just drop it into the hot folder and let pressSIGN deal with it. The great feature of why AutoMode works so well. Sandy has just sent me 2 files, so let's have a bit of fun. So just before we close, I'm dropping these 2 files into my hot folder. So you see that arriving across the green folder on my desktop. This file number 1.
You don't have AutoMode turned on, I don't think.
Oh, I'm glad somebody's watching. I'm glad. Perfect. You passed the test. So let's turn it on. I go start auto mode. Start auto mode. It automatically gets going. And there you go. So you can see that that's brought that in. The target standard we would have to set up as a template, because that's just my generic target standard. But you can see the colors are there. There was nowhere that I needed to already have those colors, other than all of those spot colors I'm hoping were in one of my libraries. Shall I drop in the other file just for the fun of it? There we go. That's the second file arriving now. And you hear it go ding, and it scored a different score. And it takes, I mean, it takes seconds for pressSIGN to report on these things.
So if we wanted to change that target, we have to stop AutoMode, open up the job, and change the target, right?
Yeah, okay. I'd have to go deeper into it, open up the file in a text viewer and see whether there was a target specifically in there, and then relate that target name that you use on your press to the target that you really want to use. But for now, it hasn't seen a conversion for me, so it's just kept my default target as the target. Just one little bit of information about the screen you're now looking at. In the bottom right hand corner, we have dot gain, and it's all in red there. Now this means that the dot gain figures are not meeting the target standard, but it also is in italics. And the italicized text means that there are no specific readings for 25, 50 or 75% in the color bar. I believe the color bar probably, I don't know what it contains actually. Does it contain, so it's got a 70%, and it might have 70%. So it's only got 70%, which is why these are all italicized. So they're estimated values, which pressSIGN then creates a curve from, but they're only from the 70% box. And you can actually see that up in this part of the screen right now. Just for your information, that's the last bit. Thanks for attending. If you need any help in the future, just feel free to ask away, and I'll stop it from there. Thanks a lot.